Hey, we're back with another round of From the Tackle Box. Today we're going to cover small hooks, jigs, and how to set up for catching bluegill and panfish. To start off, we'll clarify panfish, bluegill, sunfish, hybrid sunfish, red ear, shellcracker, rock bass, warmouth, perch, crappie, and yellow bass. That's to name a handful. I'm sure there are others I already forgot, but we're looking at this as we covered in the hook section. If you notice, we've got a lot of small and mid-size hooks and jigs. And I know that some of you out there, especially if you're south of the Mason-Dixon line, you're looking at some of those jigs and saying, now, why is this Yankee out here with a bunch of ice jigs? Well, it's twofold. You can work them much like you would a typical lead head jig and a tail like this Cubby Mini might. Or typically you would put a small curly tail grub or the nail tail grub like that. If you look at some of these ice jigs, they go all the way down to the teeny tiny sizes 10 and 12 in this, on up to the 6 and 8, the larger sizes in here. And some of them have the external tail on them, and some, like the ratfinky jig, do not. So you've got the tails on here, and I'm using some of them by name. Those particular ones, including the Demon Spoons down here, the Ratso, the Ratfinky. You've got some others, Striper Special, Teardrop down here. Those are typically by Custom Jigs and Spins. There are other companies that make them, but believe it or not, I come down to your neck of the woods and I catch fish on ice jigs just like I do with regular lead heads and plain hooks. Now, addressing the hooks, you can see we've got a slew of different styles in here and sizes. So anything from the small, you've got the small bait keeper egg hook on up to the Aberdeens, and then the True Turns. Any of those can work. We've got different colors. We've got gold, we've got blue, we've got bronze, we've got plain nickel. You can catch fish on all of them. We won't get into all the semantics and the footsies about this one's better than that one. I can tell you that some of them that have the additional bait keeper, as you can see the little spring on this, that's a True Turn hook. And then we've got you've got some of the straight ones like this that have nothing on them. And then we've got the ones, the larger regular bait keepers you're used to seeing, typically with, if you're going to fish a piece of crawler, has the little spikes on the side of the hook. So I put it up there, you can kind of see them on the side. You can use those with assortment of different bobber and float ideas here. You know, it doesn't matter if you're using a slip float style. If you've got the old trusty red and white back here, or one of these new age pear-shaped, we have the standard, just regular pear-shaped float. Then we've got some of these that even come with internal rattles. You can hear those. And we've got fixed bobbers, or stick floats, some like to call them, cigar floats. You've got even some of those with weight already added, like this Bass Pro Shop one. Same with the old Mr. Crappie, same thing. It's got a little bit of added lead on there. Whereas with the slip floats, you want to go ahead and add weight to them. We'll get into that in a second. Biggest thing is, you want to match the hook to the kind of fish. As we covered in hooks, if you're fishing tiny bluegill, then maybe you're in a size 10 or like that, or maybe you're into the size 8, the smaller hooks. Now, if you're into crappie and some of the bigger mouth sunfish, You might be into a size 8 or a size 6. That's a straight Aberdeen shank hook. Those are especially good too if you go from using any kind of worm or minnow to using crickets. I like to have the ones with little spikes like I showed you on the side that kind of hold it onto the shaft of the hook. Bluegill and sunfish are notorious for stripping them off the hook even quicker than you can feel them bite. But getting into that, one of the things I like to do is, you can see I've got a light action rod here. This particular one has 4-pound line. The backup spool for this, as you can see on there, that's 4-pound P line. 4 to 6 pound test is pretty typical, unless you're getting into the heavy cover sticks and rocks and such, where you're going to be more in contact with cover. Then you may go up to an 8, and depending on your water, the water quality. You know, if it's a dingier, darker water, then you can get away with a little heavier line. This particular one, this is my crappie rod here that I like to use. It's a 6-footer. It's got the balance system at the back of the rod, underneath the foam cover. Got an old trusty Shimano spinning reel on there that is 6-pound copolymer line. We won't get into monofilament, copolymer, fluorocarbon. Honestly, I typically use either monofilament line or the copolymer, depending on how much I've got of each for fishing for the panfish and the bluegill. It really doesn't benefit me one way or the other. But as you can see on this one, we've got slip float set up. I got a little tiny ice jig on there, and that one will present horizontally in the water instead of vertically. So when it sits in the water, instead of being straight up and down, it's going to sit like one of these other jigs here. As you can see, presentation will be like that instead of hanging down. Okay? And that's, as you can tell, it's all based on where the tie is for the line. On these regular jigs and hooks, when it's set up like that, it will sit like this, vertical in the water. Same thing with any one of these hooks. You're going to have basically the same thing. Okay? And we go ahead and we've added enough split shot in there. I highly recommend you get the removable kind that have the little tabs that you can pinch on and off with your pliers. And then we've got a Thill slip float on here. It's a night and day. And the reason they call them that is the tops, if they are hit with a light source, you can use them as the light's fading early and late in the day, and you will still be able to see those suckers on the water. What you install before all of that, going up to the top here, we've got a rubber bobber stop. Okay, and that slides up the line. You thread it on there. They come in real simple, easy to use packages. As a matter of fact, I've got several that I keep down here in the tackle box. And what I like to do is I like to put what size they are. If you notice on here, 48-pound test. And they come with a little bead. And it's on a piece of monofilament fishing line. And you run the line through that. And then pull the tie on there slowly. So it goes up both sections of the line. Once you pull out your shorter tag line that's going to go to your hook, then what you want to do is hold on to the little bead, because that will come off. And then typically what I do is I'll thread one of these floats on right away and pinch a split shot higher up than where the hook's going to be. That makes it nice and easy, so it holds everything where you want. And you won't have to worry about your stuff falling off and then losing it, because those are great to find, especially in the grass and when you're trying to get back into fishing. A lot of times what I'll do is we'll set up people with different sizes and colors and shapes. So like on this particular one, this is my wife's Lady Ugly stick. You know, she's got a little Ratso jig on there. I just replaced that with 6-pound test line in there. As you can see, she's got a little split shot up the line. And then further up is one of those weighted pear-shaped bobbers. No rattle, it's all just foam. And it's got a really nice flexible tip to it. It's got great action to it. This is actually says it's a medium light rod, 5.5 foot. More light than medium, but she could definitely bass fish with this. Panfish, just as much fun, because you've got this little spin cast or push button reel on there with the double handle, and a nice solid grip there for your hand. Now for the basics of that, you know, we really started these to help my niece, who's really getting into fishing. So push button reels are typically referred to as spin cast, okay? You press the button, you throw them out, and then you reel them back up. The other ones we showed you, some people would say very advanced, okay? That's a spinning or open-faced rod, okay, or a reel. So you'd hold it like this in your hand, and as you're going to make your cast, on some of them they've got the quick. This one does not. So you peel it back with your hands, pop her open to make your cast. You throw out your cast and close the bell. A lot of people do it. You can crank it with the reel handle to close it. I prefer to do it manually just to make the little spring that's inside there last longer. It's really a matter of preference. For me, I find that it works a little better, and the little springs that pop those back into place tend to last a little longer. So I've got this one. It has nothing on it. It's ready to be set up. So for my noobs, we covered that. There's your typical spinning. There's your typical spinning caster with the push button, okay? Either one doesn't matter as long as you're catching fish. All right, so getting into the basics then, we're going to set this up. We've got some regular spring floats here. All right, and I like to use these if it's not windy. You don't have to cast out real far. I will use those with one of these smaller ice jigs. One of these teeny tiny lead heads, and those are like size 10 and size 8, and no weight at all, okay? So the only weight you get is from the bobber, from the float, okay? You could do the same thing with the pear shape, but with those I recommend you put a little weight, 1 for casting and 2 to make it easier for the fish to pull it under, okay? With these, a lot of people use them and they'll stand up in the water like that. That's good, but it also works the same as this one, which already has some lead built in, as you can see at the bottom of that float before it changes color down to the stick. And your little spring that helps attach it to your fishing line. Okay, so if I'm gonna go with that route, I don't want to use this kind of bobber. I use this when the fish are biting light. It's very sensitive, and it will go from laying flat to when the fish starts to mess with it, you'll see it start to flicker, or it'll just stand up. Okay, just remember, anytime a bobber moves, if you've got a worm on there, take a look at the way the wind's blowing the water or the current's moving. If it's going the other way and moving, or it's standing up, the worm's not doing that. There's something pulling on it, making it do that. And a lot of people will say, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're showing the red and white bobbers. Well, guess what? Maybe this is all you've got, or those kind of pear-shaped bobbers. That's fine. You can use one of these. It's got a clip on the bottom. that's spring-loaded, put around the bottom of your line, and it's got a spring on the top. You do the same thing. Keep your fingers at the bottom and pulling it down like such, okay? So you do it like that. It'll clip around your line. Bingo, you're ready to go. And that's how we got to this look here. You can see on the top, one on the bottom. That's it. Nothing fancy. It does the job. So when we're tying these on, just remember that the with the weight on the basic bobber setup, you want to have it so it's as easy as possible for the fish to pull that under. Like with this particular setup I showed you, you got this slip float, 2 split shots, and that small ice jig. With that, this will sit in the water at right about that level. So I've got that much orange showing above the water. When the fish pulls, if they go to pull it, that'll tug down under the water fairly easy. Now the same could be said about this guy because of the extra weight that we've got on there. And you get a lot of arguments, well, the plastic or the foam is more, offers more resistance than the balsa ones or the foam. Potato. You're just looking to get it in the water, to get yourself fishing and get set up. So when you go to pick your hooks, again, remember, if you're into the panfish, number 10 for the little guys, those little tiny hooks. With the jigs, it's the same thing. They all come sized. Number 10. Number 8. Over there, the pink guy with the white head, that's a number 6. Okay. Same thing with these demon spoons. Green and white. That's a 10. You can see the 6s next to them. Okay. And the same thing with the teardrop shaped spoons, or that little striper special like I was talking about. And on the Fox Chain of Lakes up north here, striper special typically has the hole on top, or they've got on the side for that teeter-totter look. So it'll be one of these two designs. And what we call striper here is not what you call striper in the South. That is typically what's referred to as a yellow bass, where you might fish. But up here we call them little stripers. They kind of look like it. They've got a yellowish tint to them. Still a lot of fun to catch. So, hope that was helpful. We're going to show rigging in the next video. Tune in.